to our YouTube channel. We will go ahead and send you a survey also. You guys are all doing a great job with keeping the microphones off and keeping the video off, so that helps with the overall quality of the presentation. So I want to thank you all for that. Let's see here. So we can see our topic. Our topic today is you get me one more week. I've been here the last 3 weeks, and then you'll get a break from me. So today I'm going to talk about cool season color annuals, and I guess everything lined up. We've got some cool season. We've got some great temperatures, and so we should start to see these plants coming into the market. So it'll give you an idea of plants other than, mums and asters, which we normally see this time of year. Next week, Shannon will be talking about titled Pig Out, Know Your Pork. Which ought to be a good topic. He had a really good response when he talked about beef, and this was one of the recommendations a lot of people put in. Then on the 15th, Brandy Keller, our Master Gardener Program Coordinator, will talk on cool kid plant projects. On the 22nd, Amanda Cripple will be talking about food safety in the kitchen. And then we close out, since we've got 5 Thursdays in October. Our last talk will be by Brandy again also, and that will be on wildlife-friendly garden tips. So let's jump into today's topic, cool season color annuals. This is a close-up of one of the trials that we did just this past season, where we were looking at violas and snapdragons, and this is close-up on the violas that we looked at. So let's see what's out there. Hopefully we'll introduce you maybe to some plants that you didn't think about that you can keep an eye out for when you are in the garden center. So just a reminder, so everybody's on the same page, what annuals are. They do live for only one growing season. Okay, so their whole mission in life is they want to grow, they want to put a plant canopy on, then they go from a vegetative state, and then they flower, they go to a reproductive state, they produce seed, and that is the end of their life cycle. And down here, that life cycle could go much longer because we have such ideal growing conditions. Annuals overall, I like to sort of call them the bling in the garden. You can add some color. They're versatile. They're inexpensive. You can buy 6-packs. You can buy 12 packs, depending on what the people have, what the stores have available. Overall, you can add a splash of color, whether it's in the landscape or it's in containers or pots, very easily by using your annuals. So you get that instant color, instant gratification, long blooming season, as I mentioned. It allows us, especially down here, to experiment with different colors and textures and forms. And I think that's one of the things we'll see today as we go through some of these plants, that you can get unique looks in the garden without necessarily, in certain cases, having flowers. It allows you to fill those spaces until permanent plants are installed. So if you're at a new house, or when you put the first those plants in, they don't fill in right away. It takes some time. So these annuals help fill that in and add some color. They work well with perennials. And then, as I mentioned, window boxes, hanging baskets, these all work well. And there's different forms. So there's trailing forms where we can use them in hanging baskets and things like that. Okay, our site selection, just as with any other plant, make sure you're considering the light. Our day length is getting shorter now. Our days aren't getting shorter, but our day length is getting shorter. So we'll be pushing the clocks back in a couple more weeks. You've got to take that into account. The sun isn't as high in the sky now, so we're hopefully, knock on wood, out of the extreme heat and growing conditions of the summer. Make sure you prepare your soil properly, whether that's adding compost, but make sure that you've got it ready. Check the moisture. Things are going to be a little bit different now. The soil's going to hold that moisture a little bit longer. It's not going to dry out as quickly as it did just a month ago. So be aware of that. Don't water. If you're on an irrigation system that's automatic, adjust that now, because you don't want to be watering these annuals at the same rate as, say, you were watering your vincas or zinnias or things like that, because the growing conditions have changed. And if you've got any issues with your beds with regard to drainage, now's the time to try and fix that up, whether it's the addition of compost, whether it's raising that bed a little bit, or it's adding some expanded shale. That will help with the overall quality. Mulching is still key, and we can't stress this enough. There are winter weeds that come up. There's annual weeds that come up that are cool seasons. So we want to make sure that we're putting that mulch out. If we prepare our soil properly the first time and we mulch on a regular basis, we're going to have a very good, vibrant, healthy soil. The nice thing about it is, as this mulch starts to break down that layer that interfaces with the soil line, we start to see what we call humus, and that's really what is going to add additional nutrients into that soil. So ideal quantity, like to see at least 3 inches. You don't want to bury the plants when they're small. Keep it away from the plants, so we don't have too much excessive moisture, which could lead to fungal or rotting issues. Deadheading may have to occur, and deadheading is removing those spent or dried up flowers. And why we want to do that is, one, it looks, unless you like looking at the spent flowers, they get kind of old, and it just aesthetically it looks better if you clean it up, but it will keep that plant producing. All right, it's not. Once it goes past that spent flower, then energy is going into the development of seeds, and we don't want that. We want the plant to stay vibrant. We want it to keep blooming. So, marigolds, any of the flowers that have a daisy type flower, you want to probably go ahead and deadhead. Some of the verbenas and dianthus. So just a few, but as we go through, you'll be able to, I'm sure, identify which ones you may have to go out there and clean up. And then fertilization. Okay, so we prepped our soil, we mulched, we got the right site, and really it's up to you, whether you want to use a time release, a synthetic type, or an organic based. As long as you're adding that some nutrients to it, it's going to help. And if you've done your work properly, you're probably not going to have to add too much, because between the compost and the proper mulching and developing that humus layer over time, you're going to have plenty of nutrients. So this is just a supplemental to really give those plants a good chance to get those root systems established, put that plant canopy on, and then start to bloom. Okay. So let's talk about some of the plants that we're going to cover here in this cool season. First one is Sweet Alyssum, Lobularia meridema. This is a great low-growing plant. Consider it like a ground cover. The thing I like about it is it's got a nice fragrance to it. So that fragrance will attract beneficial insects. Even now, we still have butterflies and things like that. So either early, at this time of the year, we can attract them, and then on the backside, as we start to get into early spring, it'll attract them there also. Colors are white to lavender to rose to pink. You can see how nicely this looks around this tree, as opposed to having something, say, like Asian jasmine. This works extremely well, and so you can have a different color, a different look throughout the season. So for cool season, you can see we've got these nice lavender alyssum under the tree, and then in the spring and summer, you can come in with some other color items to really change that look throughout the season. Ideally, full sun, and I would say in most cases with these annuals, They will handle part shade. And what will occur usually is if the more shade they're in, the less the flower production will be. So, if you've got morning sun and it gets a lot of sun in the morning, you're probably fine. If it gets that, and especially now since our day length is getting shorter, um, even afternoon sun and morning shade will be fine because the sun just isn't as strong. So the amount of sun they're getting, the quality of it will still be ideal for flower production. The next one is cyclamen, and we're used to seeing this as a potted plant, but more and more growers are starting to produce this as a bedding plant for us in the cool season, especially around Christmas time because it's got those nice colors. So you'll see this especially in near malls and things like that where these colors lend themselves to that Christmas look. The foliage is also very nice. As you can see here, it's got a nice dark green foliage with a silver variegation in it. There are varieties out there where this silver variegation completely covers the inner part of that leaf, and it just really is quite striking, even when it's not in bloom. But you can see the flower production on these is really nice. They hold those flower stems up above the foliage. So it's a really nice presentation. So I personally like it at this time of year in containers, especially something large where you can get this nice color range in it. But have also seen it in beds like this, the picture on the left hand side, and they do. It's a really different presentation, and they perform well here also. Dianthus or carnations. Really, there's the breeding on this species has really expanded over the last several years, and we are finding ones now. So down below this lower picture here with these bicolors, that is Dianthus chinensis. That's a low-growing variety, so probably about 6 to 8 inches tall. Um, and it'll just form a mat, and these flowers will sit nicely above the foliage, so it does an extremely good job. Now the image up top here, this is an interspecific hybrid. So the breeders are taking something like Chinensis and maybe, if you remember Sweet Williams, Dianthus barbatus, and they're crossing them. So we're getting a little bit more stronger fragrance in these interspecific hybrids. We're getting stiffer stems. We're getting taller plants, so we can add more height and depth to the landscape. The other thing it allows us to do is use them as cut flowers. So where's that value added? I can enjoy them indoors. I can cut them. I can bring them inside. So I've got dual purpose. So Dianthus, very good color range, and a lot of flexibility in how it performs in the landscape. Pansy's probably the top bedding plant available here nationwide in the industry. And it really they if you want a sea of color, if you've got a large area and you just want to cover it in color, pansies work extremely well. Very versatile from sun to partial shade. Um, and you can see here, this just gives a representation. You can see we've got whiskered types. We have what we call clear types, which with the color is just consistent all the way through. We have what they call the cat face type, so or darker splotches. So it really just depends, and the color range. If you're into your college football and there's your school colors, you can easily find pansies with the color range that you to match your school colors, and you can put that together in your bed. So um, the breeding is just really exploded on this. There's a lot of options, and once they're in the ground, they really are low maintenance. The only thing I see on these every now and then is if we get too much moisture on the flowers, we can get a little bit of botrytis. which is a fungal disease, but it's more like a flecking. It doesn't even take away from the beauty of that flower. So pansies are very strong, and you will start seeing the switch outs here very soon, in whether it's at your housing development or around the neighborhood, or even at some of the commercial sites, that the pansies will start to go in here pretty soon, since we are now in this cooler weather. Now here's one that I like, and this is definitely cool season, because as soon as the humidity comes in, I have yet to find a plant, a variety, a series that will perform. But this is Osteospermum. Common name is African daisy, and it gives you that nice daisy color. And the color ranges have really expanded on this one also. So you can see the landscape height, about 10 to 14 inches tall. So it's a nice, healthy plant that will just produce these daisy-like flowers. Um, but you can see this drift of yellow here. You could see the white here with the dark eye, and then there's different shades now. There's mauves, and there's purples, and there's everything in between. So it works great as a potted plant, something in combinations or in a container, but it also can give a pretty dramatic look in the landscape. Snapdragons, another tried and true, so I remember starting out way back when it was, pansies and snapdragons. That was it. That was the main thing we were growing in the greenhouse. And if you were a landscaper, they were the main things that you were putting in. And now the whole palette has expanded. And even with snapdragons, we've got dwarf varieties, which you see here in these containers. These are maybe 6 to 8 inches tall tops. But you can see the flower production on them. So we can use these in the front of the bed. And then there's also what we call the non-dwarf varieties, which are, up to 2 feet tall, which will give you that height, a dramatic effect in your beds and in the landscape. So ideal for full sun. Again, it's another one that value added. We can enjoy it. The taller varieties, you can cut them, clip them, put them in a vase with water, and enjoy them inside. So bring the outdoors inside with some of these as a cut flower. Now pansies, cousin here is Viola cornuta, and I personally I like the violas more than the pansies, for the simple fact that they just bloom more. Now the knock on them is the flowers are a little bit smaller, but the color combinations are even, I think, a little bit more extreme that you can get in violas versus pansies. So you can have the same effect. Do you want fewer large flowers, which you would get with uh, a pansy, or do you want, even more flowers? And even though they're smaller, the effect is going to be similar. So these perform extremely well. The color ranges, again, if you want to match it up, with the color of your pots, or the color of your house to show the contrast, or your team colors, whatever it is, between violas and pansies, you can really find what you need and get the look and provide the color, whether contrast or complementary, that you are looking for. Now, this is one that it probably in the last, I'd say, 10 years, 15 years has come about. And it's really been very interesting to see. But the ornamental cabbages and kales. So you can see the different looks, in this top picture, the variegations in that foliage, and just the texture and the look that it provides. And then down here in this container, this ornamental kale, it gives you a completely different look. So this is one that if you want to provide something different, you want to give a different presentation in that bed or in that container, the kales and the cabbages work extremely well. and they're very easy to grow. When I was doing new products, we tried tatsoi, we tried everything, and we started growing a lot of these. And we're talking now 15, 20 years ago. Um, they were performing extremely well, and they were easy to grow. And once you got them in the landscape, you plant them, you let them go. When the hot weather comes, they'll bolt, and you know it's time to pull them out. And if you want to eat them, you can pull off a few leaves every now and then and add them in, so they are edible. So it's a great way to bring color and texture without having to worry about any flower production. Now, calendulas have come around here lately, which is good to see. I really like these. I've seen these in trials in the past, and they've come a long way. We call them the English marigold. So it looks like a marigold type flower, but they are also available in singles. So you've got, and they're predominantly in this orange, yellow, some whites. So it's got that very nice fall color to it, and a really good plant habit. So it's one that I think is out there more now than it used to be, and it's one that it gives you a little bit different look and very good flower production throughout the season. Petunias. You can't go wrong. Again, this is another one where we've got multiple forms of these. So, grandiflora, grand meaning the larger flowered ones. And we're talking about the flowers, not the overall plant, but the plant is going to be usually upright, quite compact. You could see 12 inches wide as it grows. Multiflora, multi meaning many. So the flowers aren't going to be as large as the grandifloras, but they're going to be smaller. So think about, the relationship with pansies and violas. Grandifloras are larger flowers, multifloras are smaller, but more of them. Um, and then we have the spreading. So you've got the wave petunias and all of those. And I would say, and now even with wave, you've got, what we would probably call a grandiflora type, that can spread, 20 to 30 feet wide. And then they've got some of their smaller varieties. So there's a lot to choose from. What you want to see, and with any of these petunias, as you can see here, you want to see flower production over the entire plant. You don't want to see it just along the edge. This is one of the issues we saw early on, especially with the spreading ones. But like anything else, they improved it. But again, these will go nonstop. We're starting to see them, I would say, especially with these spreading ones, like the waves and things like that. They are holding up much better into the spring, into the heat. Because that plant is a little bit bigger, it's a little bit beefier. The flower size will get smaller, but through the cool season, these guys just thrive, and they do an excellent job. So again, flexibility in the landscape, in containers, in combinations, however you want to use them, or whatever you can dream of, these petunias will lend themselves to that. Now, stock is a great cut flower. And it's almost like an antique type flower. It gives you that reminder of almost a cottage garden type, English garden. Mounded habit, but those stems are very nice. They're upright and sturdy, so it gives you a little bit of height. We're talking about, could be 15 to 20 inches tall, depending on the series or the varieties. But the other thing is, it's got great fragrance. So if you're around some cut stock, or you've got stock in the garden, it's got a very pleasing fragrance, which is really good. So again, another one that we can enjoy outdoors, or also cut and bring indoors. So we're not only enjoying it indoors, as a cut flower, but it's also bringing that fragrance. And the breeders in the past, you can see these flowers are pretty much all doubles. In the past, there would be some what we call genetic drift, and there would be a lot of singles in here. And it was it bad? Not really. If you were a breeder, you probably considered it bad because it wasn't consistent all the way through. But you can see the consistency in these flowers, the petal count. And it doesn't matter whether it's a white, a lavender, a red, or a deep purple. The consistency is there. So that is one of the things that has really improved with stock as a bedding plant. Now, Dusty Miller, this is another one. All right, we're growing it for that unique foliage, that unique color, that silver foliage, that velvety look. And then it's finely serrated, so it gives a complete different presentation in the landscape. And you can see it here against, working with these flowers. It just does an excellent job. You can use it in the front of the bed. You can probably use it mid bed, as a splash of color. If you've got, say you had some low growing, you had some pansies in front of this, maybe blue, and then you had this, and then maybe you had some tall snapdragons behind it with a complementary color. You could see how those colors could really play off of each other. They could really pop, and they could draw your eye into that landscape. So this is a great, multi-use plant that can really add a different look to a bed or the landscape. Now, Diacia is one that I really like. And I don't know if we're growing it enough in this area. Uh, Tops out at about a foot tall. I think it probably looks better in a container here, as you can see with these. But the colors are definitely have that fall feel to them. So and there's a lot of them. um, and they're just they're easy to grow. And I think the problem has been in the past, for the growers, there were a lot of what we call vegetative varieties, so you had to grow them from cuttings, and the cost of a cutting to buy in is a little bit more expensive than if you can do it from seed. And now we've got seed varieties coming in, and the cost of seed is going to be cheaper. So it makes more sense now for growers to start to put this into their mix. So this is one, keep an eye out for it, because I think it's one that you might enjoy, and it'll give you a really good look. And the color ranges are really pretty broad. Now I've got marigolds in here because you're probably saying, why marigolds? We just had them all summer. But think of it this way, as a mum alternative, okay? Especially the African varieties like this, those large flower heads. They've got that fall color to it. So and even in the Texas Superstars, they've got what they call the marimums. And the thought was that, they're marigolds, but we're growing them in a larger pot, maybe an 8-inch or 10-inch pot, and we're selling them at this time of year, or you're using them this time of year as you would a chrysanthemum, because the flower window probably is you're going to get your money's worth more out of these marigolds, because they're going to bloom longer than maybe some of the mums that are out there. Now the color range isn't the same, and I'll give you that. And some people, they just always, they got to have their mums by the front door, or however they use them. But as an alternative, these with the larger flowers could fit the bill. So it's just another option that you can think about. Nemesia, another one. This is like Dioecia. I think Nemesia is another one that is we're starting to see a little bit more into the market, and it's got a nice presentation. You can see these flower spikes are held well above the foliage, and it sort of has a more of an open habit to it, but it's got great fragrance. So this is another one where if you're by the Nemesia, it's in bloom and it's got flowers on it, you're gonna be able to tell it's there. So using this maybe in a container on the patio, if you're sitting out with the nicer weather, that fragrance is definitely going to you'll be able to enjoy it, and you'll have a great looking plant, lots of flowers, and very low maintenance. you may have to come through and thin it a little bit, the spent flower heads, but overall it will just be a non-stop producer. Now, primula is another one that, normally you'll see this in the grocery store as a gift plant and things like that, and the colors are quite vibrant. Um, but I've also seen this in the landscape here, um, in pockets here, and the colors on these are just really um, vibrant. And you can see that yellow eye, how it contrasts with the outer petal. So ideally, sun to part shade, I would say, part shade's going to help it even more. The other good thing is what we're seeing now with these varieties for the landscape is that they're holding these colors. They're not washing out. They're not fading. Sometimes when some of these plants, we put them into the landscape with that sun, the colors aren't there. They wash out. They fade on us. Where now we're seeing with the primula that these varieties are holding that color much better, so they give a great overall presentation. Ranunculus, you want a wow flower, looks like a peony. Look the number of petals on that, and the flower production on that. These again, there's larger varieties that we can go ahead and cut. And there's smaller, shorter varieties. So, similar to think about the snapdragons. It's the same way. Um, Great bloom window. You'll probably see these more after the first of the year. You might see them around Christmas time on the market, but usually after the first of the year is when you start to see the ranunculus. And so, from January through about March, you would see these, and they would perform well for you in the landscape. Again, the larger varieties, taller varieties, we can use as a cut flower, but a really nice presentation. Now, Calibrachoa, okay, you're probably saying, well, this looks like a petunia, and it's in the same family. But what we're seeing with Calibrachoa is the color range. These bicolors and things like that, we don't see that within the petunia genetics. And so I like these, again, if you're doing combinations, if you're doing hanging baskets, these are great for that spiller look. And so you can have some really vivid colors, say after the first of the year, after the holidays, where these colors are going to start getting you excited about spring's coming, because of their overall presentation. So they're going to be more of a spreader, more of a cascading habit. But the color combinations on these are really quite striking, and that's what catches a lot of people's eyes. So it's got that petunia look. It's a smaller flower, but it's just unique color combinations that are available. And then Bacopa. This is another one that once the heat and the humidity starts to settle in, it just doesn't perform well. But this time of year now through about March, I like it best in a combination because again, it gives you that spiller effect. This is probably the three colors that you're going to find. You're going to find it as a lavender or a blue, a rose or a pink, and a white. There are some series out there that have larger flowers, and I'm saying larger, maybe, if probably at least a nickel, about the size of a nickel. So there are some larger varieties out there, series out there, but this just gives you a great looking addition to whether you grow it as a hanging basket or use it in a mixed container as a spiller. Erysimum wallflower. This series here is Citrona. Again, this is one that has a scented bloom. So again, I always stress about we have all these we have our pretty much year-round growing. down here, and if there's fragrance, and you always, what's the hook that's going to get you out of your house, even if it's an overcast day. But if these are in blooms, you can enjoy that fragrance. And so these have a nice, sweet scent to them. They do add height and depth to the landscape. They'll perform extremely well in the full sun. And in on these taller varieties, again, it's another one that we can go ahead and cut and bring into the house as a cut flower. So, and there's other color variations on Erysimum. So you can see them in like a maroon or a red, or even some bicolors. So this is another one, and there are perennial versions of Erysimum on the market also. And then there's Linaria. This is one. Has a wispy type form. It will, sort of sway in the breeze. Performs well in the full sun. Again, a slight fragrance here. So not only the nice color combinations, the bicolors to catch your eye, but also a slight fragrance. Again, upright habit. The foliage is very thin on it, so this is one that, whether you have it in mass or you have it planted amongst other plants, where it can just sort of pop up and these flowers can come up amongst it, to sort of give it a different look and add some depth into that bed. And then verbena. Now, verbena is usually we see it in the spring, but I think ideally the flower production on this can really thrive in these in the cool temperatures. And you can see the color ranges here. So we've got, clean colors, clear all the way through, but then we've got ones with contrasting eyes. And so they work well in containers. They work well in beds. There's some varieties out there that are starting to do much better in the heat, in our heat. Up in the Northeast, Midwest, they'll grow throughout the entire summer. Here, I start to see them sort of, struggling when the heat settles in. But there are some varieties that are getting stronger that can hold up in our summer heat. But they just give you a nice. You got multiple habits on these. You've got upright habits, but then you also have the trailing habits or the spreading habits. So it can give you a different look whether you use it in a container or you're using it in the landscape. All right. So that takes us through the plants that I wanted to cover for the cool season. I hope you enjoyed that, and I guess I am going to ask whether it's Susan or Julie or Brandy. Are there any questions from the group?
Paul, right now.
Julie, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I think Brandy's trying to speak, but I can't hear her either. Brandy? Okay, there's a couple of questions. Let me start here. Okay, the first question comes from Christine. She's wondering if the Snapdragons, Dianthus, Spissicacia, and Nimsia all have the same watering and moisture requirements.
Yes. Especially if they are in full sun, yes. They would pretty much all be the same type of requirements. Again, when you water these, you're not going to be watering them every day. If you get a nice soak on them, you got to remember soil temperatures will start to drop, and so soils and with the shorter day length, the soil's not going to dry out as quickly. So they are pretty much, and pretty much, I'm trying to think, everything that's listed there would probably be similar soil requirements. The only one I would probably recommend running a little bit drier would be the cyclamen. But if you had it in a container, that would be easy to manage. If you had it in beds, I would just try to amend that soil as best you can. because they could get susceptible to rot. And then if we get some decent rains, if Mother Nature helps out, a lot of times on a lot of these, you may not even have to do any additional hand watering.
Okay, fantastic. Erica has a question. A couple people have uh, chimed in on it, but I'll just run it by you. Um, Her question is, where can I find the stock or Nemesia? Some people said Lowe's, some people said a nursery. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think, again, we're probably with some of these, we may be a little bit early. So it's more to get you ready for, you should start to see them rolling in. But yeah, stock and Nemesia, you should be able to find it in the box stores, or you should also be able to find it in your local retail independent garden center also. They should be carrying them.
Okay, fantastic. Another gentleman wrote a question. I believe Brandy answered it, but I'll just run it by you because I'm not sure and I don't want to miss anybody's question. It says, also, what flowers from the list you showed last through the winter? I know pansies, viola, ornamental, kale, and cabbage do, but it looks like a lot of these bloom in the spring.
No, actually, you'll see. Well, a lot. Some of them you will see. Um, certain ones you'll see now between now and say the end of the year, and then other ones you'll see right after the holidays. So in January you'll start to see them, and so I still consider that cool season. Where if we plant them in January and we're going, January, February through March, I would say, I still consider that cool season. Once we get into March and, clock spring forward and, we start to warm up now, and this is, if it's a typical, we know our winters can be all over the place. But overall, that's how I consider cool season, say from now, October through what I would consider probably about March.
Okay. Thank you. Wendy has a question. How about foxglove is in this area?
Digitalis, yes, you can grow it. It's going to be more of a spring type plant. Um, it's one that I love it. And it does add that extra height, and it does have the wow factor. So, and I have seen it being grown. The color growers will have it available. They're probably going to have it in a larger type pot, maybe a 6-inch or a 1 gallon, which will make it easier for you if you get it early on. And again, this is probably another plant that you probably won't see until after the first of the year, which, it will probably have a flower spike that has emerged. It won't be in flower. So as long as you know what you're looking for with the foxglove, you could, buy it, pop it in, enjoy that flower bloom. But unfortunately, through our heat, it won't perennialize, or you'd have to do it year in and year out.
Thank you. The next one's from George and Karen. They want to know if they can plant seeds for I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is
That's
nasturtium?
nasturtium.
Thank you.
Nasturtium. So nasturtium is a cool season plant. That's one I probably should have added. The flowers are edible and things like that. It's got a nice vining habit. So yes, that's something I could do now. You could do now. I see the 4 o'clocks. You probably can. The Vinca impatiens, Morning Glory. I would, if you're going to do your own seeds, I'd probably wait until after the first of the year, maybe start the seeds in February or March, and then you have them once the weather warms up. The Sweet William, which is Dianthus barbatus, you could do now, because again, that's going to prefer the cooler season. And Morning Glories, you could again, that they'll thrive in the warmer weather. So I would wait until you know. February, March, see how we're going, and go ahead and get them started that way.
Okay, and then the next one comes from Lisa. Which are deer resistant? She knows she cannot do pansies or violas.
Good question. That is something I would have to look up. I don't know which on this list is deer resistant. So unfortunately, I guess you can you'll have access to this video. You can check out, have your list and see if any of these are listed as deer resistant. But off the top of my head, I do not know that.
Okay. Um, Frequency of a good soak if we don't have any rain, weekly, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, the plant's gonna. I tend to run on the dry side. Once I see the plant starting to struggle a little bit, I'm going to give it a drink of water. And normally and when I water, I'm going to, uh, soak it pretty well. So then I don't have to come back, for another 3 or 4 days, maybe even once a week. So I would just, you just got to keep an eye on it. But definitely don't water every day, every day, every day, because you're just going to have root rot. You'll get fungal diseases and you'll just end up frustrated.
Okay. Sherry wants to know if ranunculus can be planted as a bulb on October 31st.
I believe so. Now there's seed varieties, ranunculus, and then there's the bulb varieties. And so the ones that are bedding plants are ones that have started from seed, and then they grow them out that way. So, but yes, you can go ahead and purchase the bulbs and put them in. I believe, and if Sherry grows them, she may know. I don't know if she lifts them and removes them through the summer, or if she's able to keep them in through the heat of the summer. But a lot of times, especially in our soils, they're not going to do very well. So I believe you might have to lift them, dry them, and then put them back in October. So might be a little bit more work.
Okay, and our last question is from Sally. When does she plant sweet peas?
Sweet peas. Good question. I would say check our honestly, I don't know. I would say check our planting schedule with regard to it would probably fall into the same season with regard to our vegetable planting with the peas. So off the top of my head, I do not know. I'm sure we could look that up, and if not, I would look at actually the vegetable planting calendar with that window for the peas, because I think that would get you closer and at least in the range of when you would want that.
Okay. Oh, and one more from Rebecca. Oh, she said the timing and hardiness of primula, but somebody answered her and said November.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That's when you're going to see it, when it's a little bit cooler out there. So, yep.
Okay, it
But
looks like that's it.
yeah. So the idea was to give you guys an idea of what, and I guess I should have qualified that, where I consider cool season from, now, October through about, March. So you'll see certain plants in the window now, from now until the first of the year, and then you'll start to see other ones that will start to show up after the first of the year. So. Okay. With that, well, I want to thank you all for joining us. Again, our schedule is up. Registration is open. So next week on the 8th, Mr. Shannon Dietz will be here with Pig Out, Know Your Pork. So until then, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of your week and stay safe. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.